I'm a junior front-end developer. I work for a company called Students, and I basically career changed about 2.5 years ago. So I was doing something very, very different before that. I was a fundraising manager leading a small team, and just decided that I wanted to do something different. And for me, that meant taking an apprenticeship into software development, which saw me do my first 3 months with my new employer at a boot camp in Manchester city centre. And then from there, working alongside my teammates, getting trained up. If anyone's thinking of doing something different or something similar, or if you've just got questions about that process, reach out to me. My details are on the last slide. I'll be very happy to have a chat about that. This talk is, I guess, about juniors like me coming into the industry through less traditional routes, so not the routes that we've seen, which has been traditionally through kind of computer science degrees. We're seeing a lot more career changes come into the industry, a lot more diversity, so a lot more women, a lot of different ethnicities coming into the industry, and that's fantastic. We need that in the industry. I am slightly biased myself, but I think it's a really great time for the industry. And I think that we're future-proofing ourselves by allowing us to empower and raise those individuals up into leadership and more senior positions. Over the last 2.5 years, I've got the chance to talk and to meet with lots of junior developers. Lots of them are thankfully feeling very well supported and happy. But sadly, I have spoken to many individuals who don't feel that way. They feel unsupported, they don't feel heard or wanted by their teams. And they're kind of spinning in this, where do I go now? And feeling very isolated, which is just, I guess, made even worse by the fact that more teams are going remote. This talk was put together as a product of the conversations that I had about, okay, so for those that feel supported, what's really helping you? And for those of you that don't feel supported, what would you think would be really useful? Because I think if we've got individuals in the industry feeling unsupported and, you know, on the verge of leaving, we're doing our industry a disservice. And all of the qualities and the values that we could be making the most of, actually we're going to lose these people and they will go straight back out of the door that they came into, and we don't want that. So I think this is a really important conversation for all of us to be having about how we best utilise the potentials that we're seeing at the moment in the industry. Everything that I'm saying is 3 ways. Each way has a number of different actions that you can take to kind of meet. You might already be doing amazing things and think, oh, actually, we're already nailing this. Brilliant. As I speak, you might come up with different things, and that's fantastic too. Like, this isn't a mandatory list of checkpoints. This is getting us, or was meant to be more of a discussion about what we could be doing better. I will say in my company right now, we don't do all of the things that I'm going to talk about, and that's all right. Like, I don't need it. As a team, we don't have the capacity to do everything. So really try and think about what best works for you and what best works for the juniors in your team. Some of the points that I discuss are going to be directly aimed at more senior management, the seniors in the team. But if you're a junior sat in the audience, never undervalue what peer-to-peer support can offer. Some of my best support has come from fellow juniors who just get where I've been at. If you're not a software developer at all, hopefully some of this will be translatable to your role and transferable to your team. So hopefully you can still get value from what I'm going to say. So let's move on to my first point, which is to be clear and consistent. And this is acknowledging that when we career change into any new role, whether it be software development or not, it's a really overwhelming period of time. Even just a job that you've done before, but you're going into a new role, can be scary. Coming into software development from a completely different place is mind melting. I remember, my first few months of the job, trying to teach myself how to learn again, and it almost felt like I was trying to rewire my brain when I was learning how to code. There's so many different routes in. So you've got your front end, your back end, your full stack. You've got so many different languages, and all of those languages have different tools. And depending on how you put them together, you get a completely different tech stack. I think juniors can be, or can really easily fall into the sticky trap of thinking, I need to learn everything and I need to have learned it yesterday, which is totally unfeasible and really not needed. Even the most senior of us in the room don't know everything, and that's absolutely fine. That doesn't mean you're not doing your job well. And I think one of the things I found really, really frustrating in the first 3 months of the job, and I've heard other people have something similar said to them. So in my apprenticeship, I was getting moved around teams quite a bit, and I felt like my focus was really shifting a lot, and I couldn't see my progress. And I went to my manager and I just said, I really don't feel like I'm making progress. I feel like my context is switching a lot and I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Like, can you offer me some advice in terms of what I can focus on, even if it's outside of work, just so I can start to see my own progress? And he turned around and basically was like, development is all about learning and you just have to get used to it. And while I totally agree that if you're signing up for a job as a developer, you're signing up for a lifetime of learning, we can't compare the learning that a new junior is going through to the learning that a more experienced developer needs to do to still stay relevant in the tech industry. From simple things like understanding the IDE and just being able to work your way around the screen before you ever write a line of code, to understanding version control or simple software architecture, simple design patterns, understanding how to debug. That's all stuff that you just have to learn at the beginning of your career. That does add a little bit of time to every ticket that you pick up. And once you've set those foundations into place, it's a lot easier to switch context. It's a lot easier to pick up your next language if you've already learned the basics of one. So I don't think it's helpful to just say to a junior, well, you're just going to have to get used to learning, because that's not always the case. So if we've got juniors on this like sheer cliff of learning, how do we best support them when they come into our teams? It can be quite daunting as somebody who's already there, who's having to provide support. So what can we do? I would say that in the first few weeks, first few months, keep the focus narrow and try not to change the context too much, that sense of being on quicksand. Help them to build up the foundations that they need to be able to do their job well. Excuse me while I take some tea. One way you could do this is by making sure that the team really do take a guiding role in giving tickets out to juniors. Keep the tickets small. Make sure that they're pieces of work that aren't mission critical, that aren't going to overwhelm your junior. They get them much more exposure to your product and to your platform, and allows them to build those foundations up. This helps in a few ways. So that's helping them not feel quite as overwhelmed, but it's helping the team, because if the tickets are smaller, the chances are that the questions that they're going to have for the team are much more focused too. They're easier to deal with. It means that the code reviews are going to be easier to deal with. They're not going to be touching 250 files of code. And if they are, then already, as soon as you open that PR, you know something's gone wrong. And I think one of the most important parts of this, and probably of everything I'm going to say today, sorry guys, we're going to have to take another sip of tea, is we really want to be building up the junior's confidence. And those small wins are so important. So if you keep the tickets smaller, you're going through the PR and the code review process, and that's quicker. You're getting every piece of code that goes into the live version is another little piece of confidence for your junior. And ultimately, every bit of confidence is getting them more and more independent and making them feel like with every challenge that they face in their day-to-day job, they can deal with it. And that's ultimately one of the most important differences between a junior and a senior, isn't that they've already encountered every problem, but they have the confidence in their own abilities to be able to deal with the challenge when they see it. This isn't a piece about how we should be creating a spoon-fed culture. It's about how we better equip our juniors with the tools and the confidence that they need to be able to do a good job and to really be able to rise up the ranks and to be, you know, moving into mids and senior positions. It's about that junior knowing that if they do get stuck, they can reach out to the team and have that gentle nudge in the right direction. And on that, be setting the expectations of how regularly they should be reaching out with questions. I think one of the things when you first start in a job and you feel like you're asking a lot of questions is you're kind of scared by the frequency in which you have to ask. So be saying, you know, if you get stuck and you've been unstuck for an hour or you've been stuck for half a day, whatever time frame it is that you want to set, say that's okay. Like, reach out, we'll give you a nudge, because I think that'll just make the junior feel a lot better that they know that you've got that expectation that they're going to have to answer those questions. Or you will have to answer those questions. And that leads me to my second point, which is show up. So if you're asking someone to come to you with questions, make sure that you're not hiding from them. It's so easy to do in the remote world. Make sure that, you know, if someone comes to you with a question, you try and answer in a timely way. Show some respect for the process that they're going through. It's quite a daunting task to have to rely on someone else's knowledge and rely on the fact that they'll help you when you get stuck. I know from my personal experience of going from a position of some authority to going basically, you know, bottom rung of the ladder, it was quite humbling to have to rely on someone else's knowledge and the fact that they would help me learn. So show some kindness in that process. And just remember, as frustrating as it might be to be faced with quite basic questions, 10 minutes of your time could unblock that person for the rest of their day, the rest of their week. So just try and show some patience. It's an investment when you have a new staff member in any team. It's an investment to take on a junior. Another thing that I found when I started at Students, because I was going into a remote team, I didn't just want to be that username that was just constantly asking questions. I wanted to be seen as Vicky, a person who also was a junior who asked some questions. And I spoke to my manager about how we could try and manage that. I mean, now I've met pretty much everyone in my team and I feel like Vicky and I feel like they see me as a human. But in the beginning, I didn't. So have that insight. Try and go beyond the technical questions. Try and see them as a person, ask them about things that are outside of work, just as you would hopefully with any colleague. But also, if you see that they're deflated or they seem down, maybe they've got stuck, check in with them. I think it's really useful to try and think of something that you thought that they did well recently, because when you're learning so much, it's really easy to lose sight of the progress that you've made. And sometimes it's really nice to have someone that's just a little bit outside of that to just say, hey, you're doing a good job, keep it up. And it does make a difference. If you're asking someone, again, to come to you with questions, make sure it's easy to reach out to you. But you're not superhuman. Like, you know, you're going to go on holiday. Sometimes you're going to have days full of meetings, or you're going to have a looming deadline, and there's just not the time in the day. And that is okay. But set that expectation with your junior that if you are working on a project with them and you know that they're going to have questions, plan in advance and say, hey, I'm not going to be around for the next 4 days. And I just want to see, like, do you have any roadblocks? Is there anything that you want to talk to me now? Let's book some time in now and we'll go through it so that they feel supported and they're not just going to be sat spinning until you come back. Hopefully there's someone else in the team that can help them out. If they're particularly new, make sure they know who that person is. Really, really important is to be aware of the language that you're using in your conversations. So try and avoid things like, this is a really simple ticket. This shouldn't take too long. Please don't talk about how busy you are. All your junior is going to hear is, this is a really simple ticket. I'm really stupid if I ask a question. Or, you're so busy, I don't want to bother you with my stupid questions. And obviously, it should be a priority for every team to be training with its new starters. So we want to avoid someone feeling like that. That doesn't build up that confidence. That makes them feel small and not of value to the team. going back to code reviews, which I touched on the last slide, go into more detail than you would with someone that is on your own level. And when you offer feedback, try and avoid just putting, oh, this line should look like this, and actually provide feedback as to why that change is important, and try and encourage that deeper level of understanding and learning, because whilst it might take you a bit longer to write that feedback, it'll get them up to speed much faster, and you'll see their progress much quicker. And they'll appreciate the fact that you took that time. I said right at the beginning that nothing was mandatory, and actually I'm putting my size 4s down, and this one is mandatory. Please, whatever you do not go into a junior's code if you're code reviewing it and just change it because you think it's quicker than offering feedback. I've had it done to myself. I know of others that have had it done, and it's really demoralizing. And all it meant was the confidence that we were trying to build up was getting systematically chipped down, and I didn't learn anything, you know. I didn't understand why my code was wrong. So whilst it might take a bit longer to write the feedback, again, it's an investment. So take the time and you will reap the rewards of it. A third point, really, really important, is engage the whole team. Okay, we're going to go rapidly through this last point. So that's engage the whole team. And I think it's really important to really acknowledge the capacity of your team, because I've spoken to seniors where they're like leadership teams were saying, oh, you know, for the price of a senior, we could get 4 juniors, so let's just do that. And all of a sudden, the seniors that are on the team are completely swamped. They've got their their expectations of what they're going to output go up, but actually, they've got 4 lots of people to ask them questions. And whilst they want to be able to support their juniors, there's resentment starting because their priorities are totally torn, and it's really unrealistic. So it's not a healthy position for anyone to be in. So really, really, before you take on any juniors, talk to your team, get them engaged, say what can we expect, what skills do we need, what are we looking for to really build out our product. Acknowledge, really, really important, that your velocity is going to go down, and let your team know that that's all right. So let them know that it's just as important that they're answering questions as it is to pick up that next ticket, because it should be a priority for everybody to be getting your junior up to scratch and on their way to mid. Be clear to new starters what's expected of them, and let your team know. So, don't let your team think that. And I've had discussions with people where this has happened, where a team's thought a senior's coming in, and then they're really frustrated because it's taking 4 times as long for every ticket to be completed. And the questions are really basic. That just causes frustration in the team because they're not told in advance. Might be a good idea to identify in your team who would be interested in taking a leadership or a mentorship role. I think we can often upskill individuals in our existing team by giving them the opportunity to step into those opportunities. Excuse me. It's not about building a one-to-one relationship where a junior only will ask that one person questions, but it's about building the potential for them to kind of have a more holistic approach to their development, to ask questions that aren't related to the day-to-day tasks. And I think that's really important as well. Finally, creating a safe space for everyone, no matter what their level, to ask questions and to speak their mind and to think creatively. If you are just naturally building that environment for your team, you're not doing it specifically for a junior, but they are going to be able to step into your team with much more ease. So it's about really thinking about your team as a whole and not just your junior. Now, I've been given my 2-minute warning and I've already gone over it. Sorry. This is definitely a thinking point that I'm going to ask you to take away with you. So how can you be the senior that the junior you needed? I didn't put developer on this. I don't think you need to be a software developer to think about how you can better support new starters into your team. If you're a junior, think about that peer-to-peer support that you can offer. What can you do for the juniors in your team when you go back to the office on Monday? Also write down what's useful to you right now. What would have been useful? What's not useful at all? Write it down, keep that piece of paper, and when you go up to a level of mid or senior, make sure that you read it and you use it to be able to better support juniors that are coming into your team. Obviously, mid-seniors, cast your memories back to when you were a junior. Have a think about what I've said today. Maybe you're already doing amazing things. I would love to hear from you about what they are. Finally, thank you for bearing with me. This slide, or this session, should I say, has been a little bit shorter and not in the format that I had originally planned. So thank you so much for your patience and your understanding. I'm sorry we can't have any questions or comments, but my details are there on the slide. I'd love to hear from you. It's so strange not being in the room with the people that you're speaking to. And I can just see some of your foreheads. So I don't even know if you're smiling back at me or not. I'm trying to work out if you've got frowny eyebrows or smiley eyebrows. But yeah, like, please, oh, thank you. Yeah, so please do reach out. Let me know if you agreed or disagreed with anything. Let me know what's going well in your teams. This is a really important discussion. We don't want to lose that potential that's coming into our industry, but I think sometimes it can be a really lonely position to be in. And yeah, I think it is a chat that we need to be having. Thank you so much.